Joe had been cutting hair in the same small Texas town for 30 years, but nothing prepared him for what he saw that morning. When the young customer rolled up his sleeve, the tattoo on his forearm made the old barber's hands freeze. That wasn't just ink. It was a symbol only a handful of men in the world were authorized to wear. Before we begin this story, please tell us in the comments which city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, hit that subscribe button and help support this channel. Because some stories should never be forgotten. Riverside, Texas. Population 3,200. A small town where old brick buildings line Main Street, each corner hiding its own story. On one of these quiet streets stood Joe's Barbershop, serving the same spot since 1953. The paint on its window had faded, the chair inside had welcomed countless customers, but it was still standing strong. Joe Martinez, 68 years old, gray-haired, with movements that were slow but precise. Every morning at 7 a.m., he'd open his shop, brew his coffee, and wait for his first customer. The same routine for 30 years. The same good morning, the same how you want it cut questions. But this morning was different. At 8:30 a.m., the door chimed. The young man who walked in was in his late 20s, athletic build, short brown hair. No uniform, just a plain white t-shirt and jeans. No signs, no indicators. He looked ordinary. "Good morning," the young man said in a calm voice. "Morning, son," Joe replied, setting down his coffee cup. "Take a seat. What kind of cut you looking for?" The young man sat down, meeting Joe's eyes in the mirror. "Short, military style." "You in the service?" Joe asked, preparing his clippers. "Used to be." Joe nodded. The town had plenty of soldiers, retirees from Fort Hood, young active duty personnel. Nothing surprising about that. He turned on the clippers and got to work. The young man seemed relaxed in the chair, his eyes half closed, watching Joe's expert work in the mirror. For about 10 minutes they didn't speak. Joe was concentrated, the young man lost in thought. Then it got warm. "Getting a bit hot in here," the young man said, stretching his arms back. He rolled up his sleeve. And that's when Joe's world stopped. On the young man's right forearm, just above his wrist, was a small but distinct tattoo. An eagle, but not just any eagle. An eagle surrounded by anchors, with 3 dots beneath it. Joe's blood ran cold. He recognized that symbol. Navy SEAL Trident. But not just that. The small numbers to the right of the eagle, 3 to 1-7. He knew that too. DEVGRU, SEAL Team 6's Special Operations Code. Joe's hands started shaking. He turned off the clippers. "Something wrong?" the young man asked, noticing Joe's frozen expression in the mirror. Joe swallowed hard. His mouth was dry. You really..." "Yeah?" "That tattoo," Joe pointed but didn't dare touch. "That's only..." The young man looked at his arm, then at Joe. His expression changed. Understanding, but also cautious. "How do you know that, Joe?" Joe's heart was pounding. I was in the service too, long time ago. But a tattoo like that only who carries it? Only SEAL Team 6, DEVGRU operators." The young man slowly nodded. "That's right." Silence. Deep, heavy silence. Joe stepped back. You were really in SEAL Team 6? "Petty Officer 2nd Class Michael Torres," the young man said calmly. 6 years active duty. 2 deployments Afghanistan, 1 Syria. Joe's knees buckled. He sat down in the nearby chair. "No, this isn't possible." "Why isn't it possible?" "Because," Joe's voice was trembling, "because I know you." Michael froze. "You know me?" 2019, Syria, Raqqa operation. Joe's eyes were filling with tears. "I was there." "You were there?" Michael's voice changed, harder, more careful. "Sergeant First Class Joe Martinez, 75th Ranger Regiment, Intelligence Support." Joe placed his hands on his knees. "That night, that damn night." Michael's face tensed. "Which night?" "ISIS leaders, compound raid. You and your team went in. I was outside on comm support." Joe's voice was breaking. "Everything went wrong." Michael's breathing became shallow. You were there that night. IED explosion. 3 men down. You went back despite your wounds and... Joe stopped. Couldn't continue. I carried Rodriguez, Michael finished quietly. And Jenkins. Yes. Tears were streaming down Joe's face. Half dead, you carried 3 people to the extraction point. I saw you being loaded onto that helicopter. Michael stood up. You know me. I never forgot you, son. Joe also stood up. You saved my life that night, too. There was a second wave of IEDs. If you hadn't given the warning... The two stood face to face, the old Barber and the young SEAL. 2 war veterans who had found each other in a small Texas town 30 years later. Joe Martinez, Michael said slowly. Blue Team Comms, you were the guy. Yes. You gave me the extraction coordinates that night. Yes. Michael stepped forward and hugged Joe, tightly for a long time. I'm so glad I found you, Joe. Joe was crying now. Me too, son. Me too. When they separated, both were wiping their eyes. So what are you doing here now? Joe asked. Retired 6 months ago, getting PTSD treatment, VA hospital in San Antonio. This place, it's quiet. Of course it's quiet. Nobody comes here. Joe smiled. But you did. Coincidence. There's no such thing as coincidence, son. You came here for a reason. Michael sat back down. Joe, I've been through a lot since that night. Seen a lot. And sometimes I want to forget. I understand. But seeing you recognizing this tattoo, it feels like a sign. Joe picked up the clippers again. A sign. Yeah, maybe trying to completely forget my past is wrong. Maybe I need to learn to carry it. Joe nodded. Stories need to be shared, Michael. You chose to be a hero, and you became one. People need to know this. I'm not a hero, Joe. I just did my job. Your job was saving 3 men's lives that night, and mine too. Michael sat quietly in the chair. Joe turned on the clippers again. Should we continue? Your hair still needs cutting. For the next 20 minutes, as Joe cut his hair, they talked. Michael spoke about his operations after Syria, his last deployment in Afghanistan, his retirement decision. Joe told his own story, his years in the army, why he became a barber, how he settled in this town. All done, Joe said finally. How's it look? Michael looked in the mirror. It was perfect. Military precision, but warm, human. Great. Thanks, Joe. Michael stood up, taking out his wallet. How much? I'm not taking money from you. Joe, I won't take it. You saved my life that night. This is my way of saying thank you. Michael smiled. Okay, but on one condition. What's that? I'm staying here for a few months. VA treatment continues. I'll come get my hair cut every week. Deal. And, Michael paused, maybe I'll start telling my stories instead of forgetting. Joe smiled. There are good people in this town, Michael. They'll listen. Do you tell your stories? Never have. But maybe since you came, maybe it's time to start. Michael walked toward the door, then turned back. Joe, that night in Syria, you didn't just give me coordinates. You gave me hope, your voice on the radio. In that dark moment, it was my only hope. You gave me hope too, son. When I saw you being loaded onto that helicopter, I realized that sometimes miracles really do happen. Michael nodded. See you, Joe. See you, Michael. The door closed. Joe was alone in his shop, but this time it was a different kind of alone, a fulfilled kind of alone. That day, word spread through town, quickly, quietly. A Navy SEAL had come to Joe's shop, a real SEAL, and Joe knew him. The next week, Michael came back, this time not just for a haircut, to talk with Joe, to share his stories. There was an old chair in the corner of the shop. Michael sat there while Joe worked, telling his stories, operations in Afghanistan, moments when he lost friends, his fears, his successes. Other customers listened, quietly, respectfully, and Joe started telling stories too, his own stories, his days in the Ranger Regiment, that night in Syria, how he became a barber. Months passed. Michael's VA treatment ended, but he didn't leave town. He rented a small house, found a part-time job, and came to Joe's shop every week. Sometimes other veterans came too, to hear Michael's stories, to tell their own. Joe's shop changed. It was still a barbershop, but it had become something else too. A sanctuary, a safe place for veterans, somewhere they could tell their stories, be heard. One day, 6 months later, Michael brought something for Joe, a small frame. Inside was a photograph, taken after the Syria operation, a group of wounded but standing soldiers, a helicopter in the background, and on the far left, young Michael Torres. "Keep this," Michael said. "Let's not forget where the stories began." Joe hung the photograph on the shop wall, next to the mirror, where everyone could see it. And every day, when new customers saw that photograph, they'd ask, "Who are these people, Joe?" And Joe would tell them Michael's story. That night in Syria, the heroism, the sacrifice, and then he'd add, "Sometimes heroes live in places you don't recognize. Sometimes they come to barbershops just to get their hair cut. But when you recognize them, nothing is ever the same." Michael still lives there, in Riverside, Texas, still goes to Joe's shop, still tells his stories, and Joe still cuts hair. But now he doesn't just cut hair, he also preserves stories, keeps memories alive. Because sometimes the most important meetings happen in the most ordinary places. Sometimes heroes look like ordinary people who just want their hair cut, and sometimes a tattoo changes two men's lives forever. So have you ever encountered a hero like this? Someone who seemed ordinary but had an extraordinary past? Share their stories in the comments. And if this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe. Because here, forgotten heroes' stories are told. We'll continue to be their voice. See you in the next video. Until then, if you see a quiet barber in a small town, maybe he's keeping a story too. Because real heroes don't wait to be noticed. They just wait for the right person to ask the right question at the right time.